It's good to be with you. I think I met most of you in here a moment ago. Just a little bit of background to let you know where I'm coming from. I'm not a professional in your particular area. However, over the course of time, the last few years, especially 20 years, I live in the New River Gorge in Fayetteville, West Virginia. Some of us do, don't we? And I've worked with our raft, Adventures on the Gorge, Class 6, ACE, other companies, done a lot of training with them. I've rafted there, so being a consumer of services as well as a professional, giving support training to your industry, I've done that quite a lot. But my experience in management has never been specifically managing in your venue. I guess my focus has always been is supporting those who do. I've probably, over the course of 35 years, I've managed in a lot of different scenarios. I've done about 1,800 trainings around the country for companies in the healthcare industry, nonprofit management, you name it, all the way across the board. I've been in administration and management myself for probably 30 years. I've been a CEO, executive director. I'm currently a COO of a hospice. Anybody know what hospice is? I knew what it was, but until 3 or 4 years ago, I'd never worked in that industry. You're going to think, well, why would they hire a guy like you to come in and work in an industry you don't have a background in healthcare? There's a really good answer for that. Prior to that, we were talking about this a moment ago, I was the assistant CEO of a psychiatric hospital. Okay? Sometimes you feel like you manage in a psychiatric hospital, do you not? I mean, there's some weird crap that goes on. Really? I mean, do people ever get really weird on you? Do they? I mean, you know, they're weird when they're not drinking. They're weird when they're drinking. They're different. I mean, you know, it's really odd. I was the assistant CEO there for a period of time managing. We had probably about 800 employees, and a good number of those were mine to manage. And as I said a moment ago, I'm currently the CEO of a hospice. Now, we're not going to be talking about customer service today, but one thing I always like to say is customer service is everyone's responsibility. You know, you can do customer service on front desk people, scheduling, all that kind of stuff, but I don't care who you are in the company, customer service is one of your responsibilities if you are having any contact with human beings, especially your patrons, or especially the people you work with, that you work for as co-workers, people you supervise. You have an influence on everyone in your company as a manager, an influence that affects customer service. Everybody has that responsibility. And we'll talk about that a little more in detail. Now, the big question is, why is a guy like me who's managed around the country in a lot of different venues, I live in West Virginia currently, been there for 33 years, I'm a native to Texas, was in management out there, traveled around the country doing exactly what we're doing today. How does someone like me get into an industry like healthcare, or in this case, end-of-life care, without any prior experience? That's, you know, I have people ask me that all the time. I also have a lot of history, probably 25 years in the field of addiction as an educator. I've operated recovery homes. I had a 150-bed recovery home where people with addiction came to get well. Okay, we know that's a big issue in our country. How do you think managing that was? 150 people jonesing. You know, every day for a drink, for a shot, for a pill. I mean, do you think that was chaotic? 150. And this really makes it interesting. It was co-ed. 75 men and the rest women. And some of them had children. Huge facility, an old hospital I renovated. I'm also a grant writer, and I've done a lot of grant writing, so a lot of the facilities I've operated, I also was able to renovate, make them nice for everybody. Do you think it was difficult for my staff to try to manage 150 people jonesing for Aha. Good Lord. It was kind of like being at the state hospital, the psych ward. I mean, it was really rough. It was different. But my job was to supply a service to people who really needed it. Let me say this about the people that I served during those years. I was in the field of addiction, education, and management. Some of the best people I ever met were clients in those facilities. Some of the best people I've ever met were people that came in needing help from us, and we gave it to them. But my challenge is to produce a product that changed people's lives in the moment. Now that's a pretty serious deal. It's, but at the same time, my challenge was managing my staff to where they could stay in a place to deliver a service. Whether it was, in this case, helping them stay clean and all the things they needed to do to get to a place where they could live productively again, or on the other hand, you're trying to produce a service to give people a good time, a good, safe experience on the river or wherever you may be working. Doesn't matter what your product is. Doesn't matter. The same dynamics go on to get you to a point where you can get people to follow you to deliver that in a quality way. Doesn't matter. That's why that I can teach pretty much some of the same stuff in any venue, because a lot of these things, though they be general, they are all a part of leading people together to do something outstanding, regardless of what it is. So that's kind of my resume all over the map there. But now, today, I work full-time for this hospice. Why did they bring me there? Why? Guy that, I knew what hospice was just like all of you. I didn't have any specific training in it. Can you imagine, though, when I do training on customer service, and I have in that industry, can you imagine what it is to try to market end-of-life care? Who wants to talk about that? Hey, let's talk about the end of your life. Let's talk about the end. Can you imagine how much rejection you could get when you're trying to engage people in that conversation? And they need to know what's available, because you don't want to have that problem and get there and not know what to do. So guys like me have to go out to the general population, to hospitals and clinics and various places, to tell them what's available, when this occurs, what they need to do. Very difficult. Now, why did they have me come in to their company? Because regardless of what, I had someone ask me this one time, how can you go in and teach the same stuff in all these different venues and it be effective? And my answer was, because to deliver any product or service, you have one thing in common. I don't care what it is. You have to deal with people. And people are hard to deal with. Whether it's end-of-life care, whether it's a rafting trip, whether it's ziplining, whether it's canoeing, doesn't matter what it is, you as a manager have to deal with people to get them to do something exceptional. That's the common denominator. And it doesn't matter what the product is, people all present the same challenges regardless of the industry you're in. So today, and Dave and the other presenters throughout this 2-day period are going to make this relative to what you specifically do. He's an expert in this field just like you are. Other people that he's bringing in after me today, this afternoon and tomorrow, are experts in this field. Hopefully I'll be able to share with you some thoughts that you will be able to take and through their direction apply specifically to what you're doing. You're all professionals. A lot of you know things I don't know. All I'm here to do today is to teach you or to share with you a few things I've learned in 35 years. Sometimes we teach high school students, don't we, in Fayette County? Rachel and them bring high school kids, is it every year now? Every other year? Called Leadership West Virginia.
Leadership Fayette County.
That's right, Leadership Fayette County. And they have had me in, many times, to talk to these young high school kids who are ready to start their careers on some of these same principles today. You can't get some of this information soon enough. So, as we go through this today, I'm going to just share with you my experience. Anytime you have a question, I want you to raise your hand. We can talk about it. We can brainstorm about it. I'm not saying, and we're going to talk about leadership styles, that the way I do things is the way that everybody should do it. We're going to do a personality assessment. You've already done it here in a moment. I think that is huge. Every person I hire, regardless of the industry that I'm working in, they get that little 10-minute assessment before I interview them. Now, it has nothing to do with whether I hire them. It does have to do, if I do hire them, to how I can appeal to the best of who they are. Your primary personality trait is huge when it comes to your natural inclinations. Things that are not natural to you are going to be difficult for you to do. For an example, on my little card here, and when we get there, you're going to be putting these little dots to kind of let the people around you know what your primary and secondary trait is. And we do this by color simply because it's easy to remember. I'm an orange gold, okay? And you're going to see what this means here in a moment. If you ever have the chance to hire me in your accounting department, don't do it. Don't hire me in your accounting department. I will never pay attention to detail. Anybody in here like that? I'm a multitasker. I can do a lot of stuff at the same time, but detail, you know how I check? Of course, now that you can do it online, it's easy. But you know how I used to check my bank account every month? I drove through the drive-thru and asked them. They're the bankers. Now, some of you are going, oh my God, I kept $100 in there, you know. I was never overdrawn because I always kept a little more in there. Why is that? Because that's really not important to me. I would never steal from you. I'd never lie to you in your financial department. But if I'm your accountant, you're going to jail. You're probably, and I wouldn't intend to send you to jail, but you're going to jail because I'm not good at it. It's not natural to me. Whatever inclination I have towards finance is something I've had to learn, okay? My second color is gold. What is an orange? You'll see it. It's a person that's a multitasker. People that is an adrenaline person. That's me. Always been that way all my life. But that second color is gold, which you'll see in a moment, is all about organization. I realized to be a good manager, I had to teach myself the discipline of some level of organization to balance my outside-the-box thinking. A lot of the companies that I've worked with and programs I've been a part of grew unbelievably because I'm a marketing guy. I'm the guy that's getting out there convincing people to understand and use our services. That's natural to me. Public speaking, talking. How many of you love to talk publicly? How many of you hate it? Okay, yeah. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you any more than there's anything wrong with me that I like to do it. It's a natural inclination one way or another. I want to hire people that I can appeal to their natural inclinations. I want an organizational person in my finances. I want a person that pays attention to detail. I'm not that guy. Therefore, I'm not an accountant. I could probably convince you, maybe because I could just do that I was, but you would go to prison. We would both go to prison more than likely. So these are some things that we're going to talk about as we go through this. Come in. So as I share this with you today, these thoughts, again, these are my experiences. Everybody has a different leadership style, and the principles I'm talking to you about leadership apply no matter what your style is. There are certain basic principles of leadership that apply regardless of your leadership style. And they will be the things that make you foundationally a leader. I know a lot of people that can manage, but that doesn't make them a leader. You may be able to manage a schedule, you may be able to manage a lot of things, but unless these principles of leadership are a part of who you are, you will never effectively lead people. You may be a great manager of a system, but people run the system. So if you can't lead the people, you can't manage the system successfully. Now, I'm going to do my best today not to wax philosophical, okay? But when you're talking about the ability to appeal to people and lead them, you're talking about your belief system. What do you believe about yourself has everything to do with what you believe about other people. So if you're going to make the right connections to other people that make them want to follow you and trust you, anybody that thinks you're a leader and trust isn't an issue, then you need to go do something else. Don't manage people. People may follow you because you're on the org chart higher than they are. That's not why you want them following you. They may follow you because they're afraid of losing their job. That's not why you want them. Not to say that I don't break org chart on people sometimes. When I've got people that will not pay attention to me appealing to them and trying to lead them in the right way, there comes a time where you just have to break org chart and say, well, okay, this is not my preferred thing to do, but because you are going to be defiant to following me, then you're going to have to follow me now. And here's a little write-up to make that clear to you. A lot of times I confuse people because I really do everything in my power to be kind to people and respectful to people and lead them in the way that I want to be led. But there are people, matter of fact, I've got an employee right now, her last day is Tuesday. I've been trying to lead her for 3 years. And in the world of management, I've come to a conclusion. Either I can manage people up and improve them, or I manage them out. That doesn't mean I've targeted her to say, you're out of here, or I'm going to get you. That has nothing to do with it. When you have a process where you're trying to mentor, teach, and coach people and manage them for improvement, the same process will manage them out the door eventually because they don't want to hear it anymore. This is one of the most, in my 40 years of management, this is probably one of the most defiant people I have ever met in my entire life. Passive aggressive. Anybody relate to that? Yeah, passive aggressive. Never would say anything to your face, but buddy, the goal is I'm going to diminish you in the eyes of everybody else. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. That's called a bad apple. Ever had a bad apple? How do you deal with a bad apple? I'm going to share with you how I deal with bad apples. And I'm going to share with you how a bad apple influences the rest of your team. We're going to talk about that in detail. Developing the leader in you. How to have positive influence. I don't want to have to drive anybody anywhere. I want to influence people to a point that they want to improve themselves, improve their expertise, to achieve, and in the process follow my lead and my direction, my vision. I don't want to get behind them and whip them in along the way. I don't have time to micromanage people. Anybody else in here? I make this statement. A lot of people would disagree with this. Micromanagement is a style that's only good and useful when you're training somebody. When you're training somebody, you micromanage. Once they're trained, once they get it, this is the key of a good manager. You let go and you back up. Are you always going to be there for them? Absolutely. You're going to provide support. This is what I tell every employee I hire. I'm hiring two new employees probably in the next 2 weeks. An outreach liaison and a new volunteer coordinator, person I've been discussing with you. Their last day is Tuesday, so I've already started interviewing for that position. Every position I hire for, this is what I tell them. I make this point every time right up front. I'm not here to micromanage you. I'm going to micromanage you until you are trained. Or I'm going to have someone do that until you feel confident in your job. And that will happen when your mentor, your preceptor, or myself says you're ready, but it also is when you say you're ready. I'm not going to throw anybody out there and expect them to swim when they don't know how. Now, does that mean I'm going to baby them? No. I'm going to make sure that we've both come to a place of comfort before I turn them loose. In your case, safety is paramount, right? You don't want to put somebody out on the zip line that I weigh 225 pounds. First time I did a zip line, someone failed to tell me that when our cable, when it gets wet, it's kind of hard to slow yourself down, right? What happens when you're on that big long zip line, you're going 4,000 miles an hour and it's wet? What happens when I reach up there and think, what's going to happen? Nothing. And so you should have saw the look on this guy's face when I saw me coming, and I'm sitting there going, smoke is coming out, steam is coming off, and I'm going, oh my God, and I wasn't so afraid for myself. I weigh 225 pounds. He's standing there going, and he moved. They had a big thing on the tree, right? You know, the big pad. I knew what that was for, but I didn't know it was going to be for me. And man, I'm whistling down through there going, zzz. And I think I said, get out of the way. Like this ain't happening. And so he did just what I told him. He stepped back because I'd knocked him off the stand. I hit that tree just kabow. Of course, it was padded and all of that, and I'm padded. So it was an okay experience. I'd say maybe he was put out there a little sooner than he should have been. But what I'm going to do once I've micromanaged to train, I'm going to step back, and I tell every new employee this, every one of them. Once you're trained, my job is to give you support, direction, to mentor, whatever you need. I'm here to give you direction, support for whatever you need. The rest of the time, I'm going to work hard to stay out of your way. And I'll be right here. You need something, I'm right here. You need support, I'm right here. You need direction, I'm right here. You bring me a problem, I fix it. One of the things that characterizes my leadership style, if somebody brings me a problem, I fix it then. I start the process right then. When I came to this company, again, the question was, why did they hire me to come into this company that I had no background in? Because the one thing they had in common is that they had a negative culture. They had employee problems, big employee problems, bad culture. Employees, managers that didn't know how to manage, or they micromanaged, managers that were disengaged, employees who were disengaged. They brought me as a consultant and then 2 years later hired me because they wanted me to come in and fix their culture. So there's a way to do that. We're about 5 years into fixing this culture. It's come a long ways. They brought me in and established professional standards, number one, 9 professional standards. There's a process you go through to change a culture over time. And the biggest thing was teaching managers how to manage people. And that's a little bit what I'm telling you today. Why did they bring me in? To fix the culture and fix the behavior of the people. Culture is all about behavior. The culture as a company is that is the behavior of its staff, how they treat each other and how they treat their customers. They had a big customer service problem. They did customer service training, and their scores and evaluations with families got worse. Why? Why did it get worse? Why was it worse? Think about that. And the determination that I brought to them was they are treating their customers like they treat each other. A culture is not about how we treat our patrons or our customers. Our culture is about how we treat each other. If we treat each other with disrespect, managers disrespecting managers, co-workers disrespecting co-workers, it's going to bleed right over into customer service because you create a negative culture with high anxiety and high stress, and everybody's on edge. So the moment you have a problem with a customer, you have no patience and tolerance to deal with it because we don't take care of the culture internally. We want to have that positive influence. Now, how many of you, in looking at this young lady spinning around, see her spinning clockwise? Raise your hands. How many of you see her spinning counterclockwise? Raise them real high. I want everybody to see that. Counterclockwise, raise your hands. And she's doing both. Wow, how is that? Why is that? It's because based on which side of your brain you're using to look at it determines which way she's going. Some of you reversed it, did you not? She was going clockwise, she went counterclockwise. Again, how many clockwise do we have in here? How many counterclockwise do we have in here? How many of you can reverse it just by looking at it? She's going the same way. Here we go. He's going both ways on us over here.
It's weird.
Isn't that weird? The point of this is to determine that when you're leading people, you're working on their perceptions. A person may have a wrong perception, but what is perception? It is their reality. I want to have the positive or the accurate perception on the people I am attempting to lead. And I want them to have the accurate perception upon me. And if certainly your customers. Doesn't matter. You may have given them the best ride in the world, the best service in the world, the best experience in the world. But if they leave there with their perception it was horrible, guess what? So is your review, and they're going to be not your biggest advocate going forward, but your biggest problem. Why does your role matter? Supervision, leadership's the key. Unlocking employee company potential through mentoring, support, accountability, and team building, and coaching. This, and I can tell you, maybe some of you are looking at this going, well, that's dumb, that's not me. I will tell you, in my experience, when I've taught this, people that work to become this kind of leader or manager are going to be they're going to be more successful in my observation than someone who just goes out to manage the system and pays no attention to connecting to their employees. And I've had people tell me, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to hold people's hand. I don't have time. I said, then you don't have time to be successful. I'm not saying hold someone's hand. I'm saying give them the support and the connection they need so they will follow your lead and trust them. If you can convince people on some level you care about them in what they do, they will follow you. How many times have I seen people say, I don't care. I don't care. They work, they come here, they make a wage, they work from 8 to 5, and that's what I want. Okay, that's what you'll get. You won't get the 110%. You won't get that extra, that commitment and that vision for doing a quality job that you'll get if you take the time to connect with your employees. Who are you really? Personality assessment. All right, are we ready to do this? How many of you, on your little sheets that I gave you there and you filled it up, how many of you scored highest in your orange category?
Actually, I don't know if it's broken by color.
Okay, here's what we need to do next. Okay, at the top of your assessment, let me look at one here. You've got director, planner, feeler, and analyzer. Under the word director, write the word orange. Under the word director, write the word orange. Under the word planner, gold. Under the word feeler, blue. And under the word analyzer, green. Okay, how many of you scored highest in your orange category? Okay, now what I need you to do is on the table are some colored dots. I want all of you to put an orange dot at the top of your name tag. Okay? Now, let me go to the gold. How many of you scored gold in your, okay? Do the same thing with the gold sticker. Put that on your tag. How many of you scored highest in your blue category? Okay, take a blue, put it on your tag there. And last but not least, do we have any greens in here? Yes. Put your green tag or sticker on your thing. Now, whatever your second color was, I want you to pull that one off and put it on your sticker. Like if you were an orange gold, take a gold one and put it on your sticker there. So you're going to have two colors. You're going to have the top one is your primary, and the second one, as you can see here, I mentioned it earlier, I'm a orange gold, a blue green. Are you oh, it's okay. It's okay. I also have a therapist that travels with me that, I'm only kidding here. It makes you a very complicated individual, but you knew that.
I think by the end of the season, all of us will be there.
That's exactly right. Well, I know I've got a key to the Sharp Hospital in West Virginia, so we can get you anytime you need it. I kept a key, not to get in, but to get out when I needed to. Okay, now, let me say this, and we're going to speed on through this. Your behavior is a combination of those two colors. I'm a combination of orange and gold. I'm a person who, as I mentioned earlier, is a very outside-the-box thinker. I operate off the cuff in most things. I'm a natural visionary. But I also, as a second color, have gold. I realized years ago, for me, now orange is natural. Most psychologists would agree, probably 3/4 of them, that your primary personality trait is genetic. There are a lot of things that influence personality development, but you were born with a specific predisposition to a particular trait. When I was born with a predisposition to be an orange personality type. Lots of things influence that, but that was the way it was. The other three colors can be environmentally enhanced to bring balance to your primary trait. My orange needed more organization. Therefore, I developed some internal disciplines that make me more gold. What do you mean? How do you do that? If you go in my office today, I'll have 5 or 6 long lists of things to do. I'm not an organized person, so I have to write down and prioritize and triage my tasks. That's one thing I do to help me be more organizational. I'm always about routine. I've managed in my personal life to get very routine about how I do things. That also helps me be more organized, because typically I didn't have that. I've probably done this assessment, and this is not exaggeration, given this assessment about 15,000 times over the last 20 years to groups. And I've gotten good enough at, I can typically, and I test myself a lot, I can watch someone's behavior, listen to their voice, watch their behaviors as they interact, kind of look at how they go about their activity for 5 minutes. I'm about 99% accurate at identifying their primary personality trait. And the only time I miss it is as I'll sometimes identify that secondary trait. The reason, as Dave said, that's useful is that if I am an orange dealing with a blue, and we're going to talk about these differences in a moment, I'm going to know that blue personality types are feeling type of personality. So I'm going to be very careful with what I say. As we'll see in a moment, blue personality types don't just hear words, they feel words. They're about feeling words. So I'm going to be very careful what I say. If I'm supervising a blue, I am always very careful about the words that I use. Now, if I'm supervising an orange, doesn't matter. They just give it back to me. I mean, unless you're a secondary blue, and that will have an impact. But that is kind of how you do that. And I use this 24 hours a day in my life. If I'm in the grocery store, when I meet people, I immediately size that up, because my communication with other people, someone said it over there, I believe it was over there, not about me, it's about you. To be successful in communicating with you, it's going to be me taking my thoughts and putting them in a context you will understand. So if I'm dealing with a blue, I'm going to take my orange thoughts and put them into a blue context so you'll better understand, or a gold, or a green. The things I saw and how they solved this problem, I think this table being orange kind of solved it. Let's give them ice cream and beer. They listened and then they immediately responded with something to change in the moment. Orange is that's the way we think. It's all about, okay, so let's do something now about this. We moved over to the goals. This was in my mind, kind of a process-driven group. Tell me if I'm wrong. We ended up with a form that could help us. Goals are organizers and about process. You're thinking about how the process is going to fix the problem. They're thinking about ice cream and beer first. Not that the process isn't important. You get over here, and these are the adults, right? You've got an irate person acting like a child or a teenager. You're going to try to appeal to bring them to a place where they can rationally see what's going on. That's what greens do. You'll see in a moment, greens are all about, they're left brain dominant people where they focus on rational thought and they make decisions based on rational thought. And we'll get into that in a moment. Then you got your blues over here that are all about really just kind of seeing it from the perspective of the other people and wanting to react and respond to that and listening to them. I would say, listening is an important part of what blues do. But I think that the groups actually indicated this primary trait. Now, we're going to get into it now and talk specifically about these traits. Now, this is the power of personality. No matter what your personality type is, this is how your primary trait affects you. And research shows this. Your primary trait, whether you're orange, gold, blue, or green, affects your problem solving. You will problem solve based on partially this primary personality trait. So it affects your thought processes. Blues are going to have a real feeling process. Oranges are going to react very quickly. A lot of people that I find in law enforcement and like EMTs, people involved in those kind of things where reacting quickly are important. A lot of those individuals are orange personality types, people that are constantly ready to react to a situation. It affects your emotional state, your emotional threshold. For an example, a blue personality type or a green personality type will have a lot of left brain energy, synergy, function. The right brain, your left brain's called the cognitive part of your brain. Your left brain, your right brain's called the affective part. When you are an emotional, feeling person in the moment, the part of your brain that's more active is your feeling part of your brain, where you store feelings, emotions, and images. Your left brain, your cognitive part of your brain, is where you analyze. It's where you do math. It's where you organize your thoughts. A person that, let's say, has a very high green will have high left brain energy, a lot of intellectual energy, but they may have lower emotional threshold. What does that mean? They have less tolerance for emotion, right? You greens, would that halfway be true? I mean, unless you have a secondary blue. In other words, for one of your patrons to come up upset and they get over it and want to give you a hug, that might not be necessary, right? They might not want to hug you. Blues will go, hey, come on. The oranges are going, wipe the ice cream off your face and we'll hug. Come on. And then we'll have a beer. And the golds are just like, oh my God, give them a form. Let's move this thing along. How you connect. Your primary trait affects how you connect to other people. On the job, your team members, the people you're supervising, the people who supervise you, what you project. Your primary trait affects the kind of body language. How many of you are aware that probably 60% of how people communicate with you or what they perceive about you comes from your body language? 28% comes from your tone of voice, and less than 7% comes from your actual words. So people are reading your body language. If you're frustrated there, and you may not be saying it, and they see this, there's an emotion in them, a feeling attached to what they're seeing in you. And they're going to react to that. How you participate in group dynamics and how you influence. My influence on other people, my primary personality trait is going to have a specific influence on certain kinds of people. Sometimes as an orange, I have a negative influence on other colors. The color that if I've had conflict with most of my career is going to be golds, because they want to plan it. They want to process. I'm like, let's just go do it. Don't give me directions. Just tell me what you want. I'll figure it out. That's the way I think. Well, sometimes that gets me in trouble, right? Now, I've raised my second color to be gold, so I'm more thoughtful about risk taking. But I need my goals on my team because they're the ones that figure out how to make my dreams come true. When you're doing team dynamics and you've got orange, gold, blues, and greens, these are the visionaries. These are the guys that think about what we're going to do. They've got the energy. The goals are the ones that put the process in place. The blues the greens are the ones that make it perfect and better because they're going to see the flaws in it. And your blues are typical of the people that make it meaningful. And it takes every one of us working together to come up with a complete experience. Now, your four types, and I think we can kind of see this. You can look at it. Your orange color, in this case red, takes charge and motivates. Oranges tend to take charge. What will influence that is your second color. And we don't have time to get into those secondary colors, but they usually balance out our primary. Your goals, this table here, are observers, they're preparers, they're organizers. Your feelers, your blues are your connectors, your observers, your feelers. And last but not least is your troubleshooter, and people that perfect is your green personality types. I always know everybody on my team. The biggest problem you have sometimes is people only hire people that think like they do. A lot of CEOs want yes men and women. I do not. I want diversity on my team. I want people who will respectfully challenge the process and not just go along with my big orange idea. And I want that kind of participation. So I'm constantly trying to hire people. I'm not a medical professional, but I supervise a team of nurses. Go figure. These nurses are great clinicians. They don't need clinical supervision. I got a chief nursing officer that can give them that. What they need is to know how to function as a team. My team is the highest functioning team in our company. We've got about 150 employees. My team of 8 or 10 employees are highly functioning because there's no drama. And that doesn't mean I hired all oranges. I've got greens, I've got blues, I've got oranges and golds on that team. But I teach them how to listen to each other and complement each other constantly. And when we have conflict that they're not managing, they bring it to me and we fix it, because communication is paramount. Now, I'm going to go through this very quickly just for the sake of time. If I had more time, we'd talk about this more. Here are some attributes of an orange personality type. Keys to understanding, communicating with this orange: they are direct communicators. They work in the here and now. They're results oriented. They look for solutions, follow the path of least resistance, flexible, welcome changes. For an example, no one likes change, but oranges can tolerate change more quickly than maybe a gold. Golds have to figure that out. Oranges can change gears sometimes very quickly. They make decisions quickly, institute changes quickly. These are some of the things, the primary attributes of an orange personality type. And they expect people to want to have fun. One thing I bring into every job I have, regardless of where it is, an element of let's lighten up here. You know, let's lighten up. You can imagine how depressing end-of-life care can be. My team has learned to balance that. We have a good time. I take about every 3 or 4 months, I take them to the steakhouse and buy them all dinner. And we laugh and we have a good time. I want them to feel that way when they're at work. I'm always kidding with them. I'm always got little private jokes going. That's something that an orange can bring to a team, and I do that. I want them to enjoy their job. One thing I never want is an employee that works for me to hate to come to work. I want them to want to come to work because they have a vision for what we do, and I'm not in their face all the time. I'm letting them experience their own creativity based on the color they have. These are some ways you communicate with an orange. For an example, a blue, if you were communicating with an orange personality type, get to the point, give results, choices, and options. Focus on desired outcomes. Respond to the competitive learning in nature. Oranges are competitors. So if you're going to communicate with me, understand that about me. Hands-on learner. Don't give me a lot of directions, you know. Give me enough and then watch me to make sure I don't hurt myself or someone else. But let me experience the freedom to kind of learn it on my own. Wants to add fun and enjoyment to every conversation. Allowed to take lead in conversations, enjoys talking more than listening. That's something that oranges, unless you have a secondary blue, are guilty of. I'm a talker, so I've had to learn the skill of empathetic listening. One thing that helped me with that is having 3 daughters, and 3 sons, What was I thinking? 6 kids. I'm an orange. What do you expect? You know, goes with the territory. All we want to do is have a little fun. Things that stress an orange: restrictions. Nothing will restrict than too many rules. Somebody micromanaging me will drive me insane. Rigidity, a lack of flexibility, lack of freedom, spontaneity, lack of recognition, lack of points, alternatives, lack of fun, enjoyment, recreation. Your organizer, your gold. I want to flip through these. Planner, communicator. Intentional about decisions. Uninhibited, takes directives well. If I've got goals working for me, I want to make sure I give them the tools and the direction they need to do the job. It'll frustrate them if I don't. expects punctuality, order, loyalty, obeys the rules, detailed approach, uncomfortable with change, especially quick changes, a thoughtful process, and needs time to process change and make decisions. And their motto is, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Sometimes oranges will have conflict because our motto is, if it's not broke, let's break it. What do you say? So we'll have something to do. I mean, that is a typical conflict that they have. Keys to communicating: stick to the subject, no rabbit trails. This is when you're speaking to a goal. Stay on task, subject matter. They always operate from a historical perspective. They're all about, well, it worked yesterday, why wouldn't it work today? And very serious about discussing work-related issues. And above all, don't break, change the rules. Goals are all about the rules, all about following the rules. Creates problems sometimes. Stressors: unclear expectations, people cutting corners, undeserved criticism, taking unfair advantage, minimizing the seriousness of an issue, which can create a problem over here because we're going to be more lighthearted as an orange, limited resources, others falling short of expectations. These are stressors that you need to be aware about as a gold when you're going through your daily performance. The feeler shows concern for others. Feelings are openly expressed, shows enthusiasm, open communicator, good listener. One of my daughters, my youngest daughter Faith, worked for ACE a number of years ago, and they figured out immediately she was a huge blue, orange personality type. When they had a problem, they would go get Faith. And Faith was the first person people saw when they got off the bus. There she is, 6 foot tall blonde going, hello, good to see you. How about a hug? People immediately felt like they were in the right place. And when they had a problem, they called her. Get Faith. She can help fix this. She didn't know any of the answers, but it was her demeanor as a blue. Very engaging. Always look for hidden meaning and motives. Establish rapport when you're communicating with them. Listen attentively. Make eye contact. Never when you're talking to a blue, you're going to be looking at your watch and looking off and looking here. Do not do that. They want eye contact. They want your attention. If they think you're not listening, it'll feel like disrespect to them even though you don't intend it. Don't use sarcasm, okay? They know there's always an element of truth in sarcasm, right? Oranges are big with sarcasm. Don't use it with a blue, because when you say, I'm only kidding, they will know you're not, okay? And then stressors: insincerity, broken promises. If I'm working with a blue, I want to make sure I do everything in my power to do what I say I'm going to do. Deadlines, unfriendliness, excessive disapproval. These are all things they hate. Conflict typically. And being left out of the loop, very important to them. And then last is your analyzer. Logical communicator. Makes decision based on fact, not feeling. Never see them sweat, concerned about principle. Not a social butterfly. That doesn't mean they're unfriendly. They're just not always going to move well in a crowd or even want to. Hard to read body language. They don't give you a lot of body language unless their second color is blue. They appreciate acknowledgement, and they're all about the big picture. Ways to communicate with them: when you're communicating with a green, be logical. Get to the point. Have your facts in order. If your facts aren't in order, they're not going to think you're very smart, okay? You come with, trying to convince them of something and you don't have your facts, they're probably not going to listen to you very long. Don't be over emotional, too descriptive. Use careful enunciation of words in conversation. Above all, don't waste their time. Stressors: emotional confrontation, being pressured, hurried, unnecessary conversation, lack of seriousness, wasting their time, absence of quality. Your greens are the ones that want it done right. They are the ones that will pick out flaw. That's the beauty of who they are. If I've got a problem and I can't find it, they're going to find it in the process. And a lack of control. I think that portion that I just went through really too quickly is something that would bear going back and looking at, because there's two things to gain from this personality concept. Number one, a greater understanding of yourself. 28 years ago, when I kind of discovered this concept of personality, I will tell you, it reframed my whole sense of confidence in who I was. Because obviously, I was an orange personality type raised in a family of golds. I was the rule breaker, the risk taker, and I was raised thinking something was wrong with me. And the truth was, there was nothing wrong with me. You know, we usually think our way is the best way. And that is true, but it's only true for you. There are many other ways to do things. And in supervision, you have to find that out. And so when it comes to your primary trait, and understanding this concept to some degree can help affirm who you really are. There was nothing more powerful for me as a person is to realize I wasn't crazy and there wasn't something wrong with me, because my family always thought because I didn't behave the way they behaved that something was wrong. And I had brothers who were the same personality profile as my mother and my father. And here was this orange outlier who, if you said get in line, would step out of line. You say sit down, they stand up. You say shut up, they talk. And my family didn't understand me. This concept, I do a lot of couples work, couples retreats, those kind of things. This is a powerful tool in helping couples understand their internal dynamics. I also use it in parenting. I told you I've got 6 children. I've got 3 boys and 3 girls. All their life, I have known what their primary personality traits were, and I have treated them accordingly. I've never compared my children, but I wanted them to discover their own uniqueness and not have to go through what I did, thinking till I was 25 or 6 years old, oh my God, there's something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me. Did I need balance? Absolutely. But my primary personality trait, when I got a hold of the concept, has had more to do with my personal and professional success than any other thing I've ever done. I don't mind being orange now, even though it needs to be balanced. It has led the way for my career. I've been able to go into companies and use it to impart vision to employees and the corporate sponsors and to board members about where the company needs to go, because one of the key components of an orange is that visionary. But it's true with every component part. So what we're going to do now, so I would say go back and look at these things. Go back and look at these descriptions of what each personality type is, how they function, how they are perceived. All of that is exceptionally important to you being the kind of leader and supervisor individually for your employees that we're talking about today. But what I'm going to do now is kind of go into some of these more philosophical, generic things that apply to any person that wants to be a leader. So, in looking at this concept of orange, gold, blue, and green, these are some questions I want to ask. Which leadership style fits you? Your personality type will lay out, if we had time to talk about leadership style, we would spend time basically talking about your primary personality trait, because it will define the kind of style you have. Describe a time when you clashed with another personality type. Who won and why did it happen? These are just questions that you need to ask yourself. One of the ways that I use the personality concept is to manage conflict. Any team is going to have conflict when you bring all these personality types together. For an example, one of the things I do, and have always done, but one of the things I do at Hospice of Southern West Virginia is I perform mediation. When employees can't get along, we have 9 professional standards, and number 9 is conflict management, conflict resolution. Conflicts between employees are not tolerated. We've got a 4-step process. If you're having a conflict, work it out. If you can't, go to your supervisor and then bring your supervisor in to do mediation. If 2 employees are not going to work out their conflict and it affects communication and productivity and product quality, that's when, as a supervisor, I step in, or one of our managers steps in and says, you don't have a choice here, we're going to mediate. I just did 2 mediations the other day. And I mean, when I talk about mediation, I'm talking about getting after it. I had 3 nurses in there, and I'm going to tell you, anybody know anything about the nursing field? Their motto is nurses eat their young. That's what they say. And they eat their old too. They devour each other sometimes. And they were in there, buddy, up in each other's. Now, I keep it at a manageable rate. They were cussing. They were talking. And I'm going, say it here, because I don't want you saying it out there anymore. If I catch you after we finished an hour and a half of mediation, we finally got to a point where apologies were issued and people were broken and people were crying and I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done this and that. And then I said, now here are the rules. When you go out from here, if you talk about this out there to anybody else, I'm writing you up. Say what you want to say. Talking to someone out there can't change anything. This is where you solve a problem. You go back out there and gossip, I'm writing you up. And I will. And that they believe me because I have. I want to see our people communicating. And one of the big problems when you do mediation usually is 2 personality types coming together. You got a gold and an orange going after it. In their basic conflict, there's many things that have occurred, but basically it was that one of them wanted to do it their orange way and one wanted to do it their gold way. And we think sometimes because people are different, that means that they're mentally ill because they want to do it a certain way. And it's not. It's just different. So talk about conflict. When you've had a conflict, look at it from a personality perspective. Always there's stuff that adds layers to a conflict, but when you get down to it, 90% of conflict is personality based. And we have to learn to manage our differences. That's called teamwork. You can get on my last nerve as a gold, but I appreciate and respect who you are. And I need what you bring to the game. Every idea I've ever had as an orange developer, I grow companies, I've done that. Every idea I've ever had I couldn't make happen, I need the golds to make it happen. I need the greens to make it perfect. I need the blues to make it meaningful. That's just called teamwork, but coming from a place of understanding. Describe the positives you see regarding your style. Think about the positives, but your personality type has a double-edged sword. When I get stressed out, I go ultra orange. As a manager, what does that do? I just start giving orders, directing. Do this, do that, do this, do that, do this, do that. Instead of being thoughtful about my process. Same way with goals. Same way with blues and greens. When you get stressed out, you go into excess in your primary trait. There's always the positive, but it's a two-edged sword. There's always a negative to my trait when I'm not managing it. Describe some negatives you see in your style and how might you make adjustments. These are all things that you have to do internally with yourself. I constantly do this. When I find a personality type I have a specific trouble dealing with, I told you about this person that is leaving our employ next Tuesday. The part of that was most difficult for me for 3 years to deal with is the passive-aggressive nature of that person. Now, what is that? That person is a major blue. Wonderful color, but when it's in excess, she tended to become passive-aggressive. And because she couldn't get me to see her the way she wanted to be seen, or I wouldn't drink the Kool-Aid, what she wanted to do is go to everyone else and diminish me in their eyes, diminish my leadership. And of course, what did I do continually is I confronted it in a very kind, generous way. To this very day, I don't harbor any negative feelings, even though this person's been very negative towards me, never to my face, but behind my back. I constantly have to work to stay unconditional in the way I relate to my employees, whether they do what I want them to or not. Something that John D. Rockefeller, all of you knew who that was, a leader in our industrial revolution, says, I will pay more for the ability to deal with other people than any skill under the sun. Now that's a guy that assisted in changing our country. What was he looking for? He was looking for soft skills in people, people that can deal with other people. He knew that was a key to product quality, that was a key to efficiency. This is something I like. It says, if you think you're a leader and no one's following you, you're only out for a stroll. It's simply the truth. If I look back and there's nobody there, I have to ask myself the question, why? Are there some people that will never follow you? Absolutely. But if you and I can possess the qualities effective for positive, dynamic leadership, you're going to have people following you because they trust you, because they're connected to you. Leadership is the activity of influencing people. I don't want driving people, bossing people is not leadership. I want to influence people. I want to influence them to believe in the vision, believe in the company, believe in the product, and in turn believe in me. So when I point the way, they're willing to follow that. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. Effective leaders take an initiative. I told you earlier, and again, I'm referencing myself. It's the only person I can reference, not just toot my own horn here. I'm just saying, I'm sharing with you my experiences. You may end up and say, oh, well, I don't agree with that, and that's fine. We can agree to disagree. But one of the attributes that the people in our company appreciate about me, and they tell me this all the time, is when they bring me a problem, they know I'll do something about it. I may not have the answer, but I know the people who do. And they know that I will work till I get the answer, and when I get it, I will tell them about it. I'll call them right in and say, we fixed this. This is what I did. This is how it's going to work. People tell me constantly, they bring stuff to me they don't take to the CEO. They don't take to their managers. They bring it to me for one reason. I don't supervise them. Other than my general role as Chief Operating Officer, they bring it to me because they know I'll do something. I take initiative. Good leaders take initiative. Secondly, they lead by example. It's huge. Don't ever ask someone to do something you're not willing to do yourself. It's just real simple. A number of years ago when I was starting a women's recovery home like 2 hours away from our home office, a recovery home for addicted women with children. I wanted these women to be able to keep their kids. You know what I'm saying? These babies needed their real mommies. They didn't need to be in foster care. So I set up a program to get their moms in treatment, get them on the road. But I needed to renovate a beautiful old kind of Victorian home, a little place called Ripley, West Virginia. It was a dump. And I had a maintenance crew that I was going to send up there and ask to work up there for probably 5 or 6 weeks renovating that and leave their families Monday through Friday and sleep in a motel. I was going to ask them to do that. Do you think they wanted to do that? No, they didn't want to do that. So what I did, we went up and the place was a mess. 2 foot of water in the basement. I mean, the filthiest, nastiest mess you ever saw in your life. And I told them one day when I showed it to them, these are craftsmen. These are great carpenters, wonderful in what they do. They could make that place look beautiful, but I wanted them to be motivated to do it, so that's what I told them. I said, okay, I know this is a mess. I'm the CEO now, remember that. And I said, I'll make a deal with you guys. If you guys will come up here and give me 5 weeks of your life away from your families, all you'll have to do is walk in this place and do what you do. Your skill, your artistic ability, and make this place beautiful for these women that need a real home. I said, what I will do, I will myself spend 3 days up here and I'll clean this dump out. Me. I'll get 2 industrial dumpsters. I'll throw all the furniture out. I'll pump out the basement. All you'll have to do is walk in here and do your job. No cleanup, no nothing. And if you'll do that, I'll do that. And they went over and talked about it. Now, I had the ability to tell them to go do it, right? I'm the CEO. I can tell them most anything. But I didn't want them to do it because I told them or because I was CEO. I wanted them to see the vision of what we were trying to do for these ladies and their babies. They came back. My maintenance supervisor looked at me and said, we're going to do it, but you got to have this place clean. I said, I have it. I'm done. They took off. I spent 3 days cleaning that place out. Got it clean. Pumped out. It was ready to go. And I remember the old lady that lived next door came over who was really not wanting us to have this treatment facility for women. She didn't want it. That house ended up being the most beautiful house on the block, by the way, in a decent neighborhood. She came over the last day and I was leaving, loading up, and buddy, I'm going to tell you, I was beat. I'd worked my tail off 10, 12 hours a day for 3 days. I was getting in my car and she hollered at me and I went up and said, yes, ma'am, what can I do for you? She said, aren't you the CEO of that company? And I said, yes, ma'am, I am. She goes, you sure don't work like one. What was she saying? I'm leading by example. You're up here doing. Those guys went in there and made that one of the most beautiful homes on the street, probably the most beautiful. And we had a good place for women and children. They got that vision. They did it because they trusted that what I was telling them was the truth, and I led by example. And lastly, have the power of positive influence. Communicate with influence. Leaders have the ability to have a positive impact over an employee's perspective, their self-esteem, self-value. Everybody on my team feels valued because I tell them that every day. I don't patronize them. I'm not just throwing out BS out there telling them stuff to make them think I like them. It doesn't matter if I like them. But when they do something good, I tell them. It's rare in my company. It's rare. I mean, they do something and it embarrasses them sometimes because I come and tell them, that was great. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. And they don't have to say, well, you're the best boss I ever had. I don't need that. It's all about me communicating with them. I can affect their mood, their self-esteem, their self-confidence, and the overall sense of their competence. I want them to all know they are competent. I want them to know that their primary trait is something I appreciate and that it has value with me. And all of their education, all their experience comes to bear. I said I have the most productive team in the company, and I do. Our numbers are off the record. We've beaten every record since I've been there financially. Admissions, referrals, the whole 9 yards. And it's because I have had a positive impact and influence on my employees. Every employee fall into that? No, there's a very small number that have not responded well to that. I told you about that one, and that's absolutely the only one out of all the people I directly supervise. Effective leaders view authority not as power, but rather as a resource and a trust enabling them to shoulder great responsibility. I do not want to have to break org chart on anybody and say, well, now you're going to do this because I'm your supervisor and you have to and I'm directing you to do it. I never want to go there, even though occasionally I have to when they're so defiant and so defiant against accountability that I have to break org chart, and I will do it. Typically, I don't want to do that. I don't see my role as Chief Operating Officer or Executive Director or Chief Executive Officer, which I've held all of those roles. I don't see that as authority. I see that role as having great responsibility. And it gives me the authority to shoulder that responsibility. My most important asset and your most important asset in your company are your people. And they need to be treated like that's true. You know, your influence is about knowing yourself, knowing your employees. They understand team dynamics. They adhere, convey accurately all of these things in their word, their behavior, their attitude, their core values, and the culture of the organization. They take initiative. They're not timid in addressing issues. They initiate communication. They point the way. They initiate, maintain professional relationships based on mutual respect. My concept, and here I'm breaking a little philosophical here, is not about leadership meaning I'm out in front of anybody. I don't see it that way. My concept of leadership is that I'm in the pack. I want to be with the people I'm leading. My goal as a leader is to point the way so that we can all walk in it together. Not me walking out front with my ego up there. Yeah, you know, come on guys, follow me. I don't do that. It's ineffective. You look back and you're only out for a stroll. Where is everybody? I want to know when I'm having a employee struggling, I want to be back there in the pack so I can help them out. Make sure they don't get behind. Make sure they can stay up with our pace, because our pace is fast. As a leader, I want my company moving forward in an appropriate level of acquiring and accomplishing goals. We have goals. We want to meet those goals. We want to get there on time. So I stay back in the pack. I stay connected to my people. How many times have I found my employees having trouble keeping up? And all I then have to do is provide them resources and training so that they can stay on task. models employs not only leadership, but the ability to follow his or her superiors. If you want to know how I lead, now this is important. Again, I'm waxing a little philosophical here, but if you want to know what kind of leader I am, how I will lead people, you can directly look at how I follow my superiors. If I do not follow my superiors, if I'm obstinate to them, if I'm not respectful to them, then it's going to show up in how I lead other people. I interviewed for a job one time, and they asked me the question, what kind of leadership style do you have? And I said, well, all I can say is, I was the deputy director of an agency. I said, what you need to do, and I had a card, and I wrote a name, and I said, here is my boss's number, call her. She'll tell you what kind of leader I am. And they looked at me, and I said, because I believe how I follow her is how I'm going to lead people. If I can follow in humility, if I can follow in vision and know how to submit to authority and know how to be accountable to the people who lead me, I'm going to treat the people I lead just like I want to be treated. And they did. You know what? They called my boss and I asked her that question. She laughed out loud. She said, he's the most respectful, submissive young man that's ever worked for me. Somebody said, well, how is he working? This is years ago when you could say something like this. How is he working for a woman? Somebody actually had the gall to ask her that. And she laughed and she said, he's, again, the most respectful young man. I can't even really tell there's any difference. He treats me like he does everyone else. My respect to her is mirrored in my respect for my employees. Reality versus myth. There's some quick things to think about. The myth, leadership is about control of resources, time, money, and information. Reality, effective leaders provide support and clear direction. Myth, leadership is all about imposing order. Reality, leaders challenge the process, shake things up, and bring about and help employees navigate change. Every company needs to have a change model. My employees don't get freaked out when our company changes. You know why? Because I have a change model to use to help them navigate that change. Matter of fact, I do an entire seminar just on how to psychologically and emotionally corporate change in a company. You know what happens when you get a new CEO, a new director, a new executive director? Oh, what's this going to mean? Everybody gets afraid. Is the company going out of business? Am I going to have a job? Is our benefits going to be cut? All of that stuff. All those are questions that are very natural. You've got to have a change model to help people navigate the changes as they happen. My staff never gets afraid of anything because I tell them everything. We talk all the time about our company, where it's going. It's finance even. And I realize, you can't tell everything, but I tell them enough to know that we are not in financial problem, that our fiduciary assets and our process is sound. Myth, leaders are cool, aloof, analytical, separate emotions from work. The reality is leaders inspire passion, intensity, caring, and fairness. And that doesn't matter what your personality type is. Any personality type should be able to inspire these things in people. Myth versus reality. It's lonely at the top. Reality, effective leaders are deeply connected to the people that they lead. Why? When I was CEO of a company that had 173 employees. We had like 17 different programs that we did. Once a month, I went out and let somebody have the day off and did their job one day. Why did I do that? Because I wanted to know what my people were having to deal with on the job. If it was a county transportation program, I drove a bus. I wanted to know just how hard that job was so that I could come in and make sure I understood their concerns. Not every CEO has the time to do that. I didn't really have the time, but I made the time because I knew it was important. All leaders possess charisma that draws people to them. Leaders simply have a well-defined purpose and vision and are able to communicate that belief. Some people would say, oh, you got to, to be a dynamic leader, you got to be this orange that's always out there. No, every personality type can have that well-defined purpose. And whether you do it as a green, orange, blue, or gold, well-defined vision for the job and able to communicate that vision to the people that you lead. Leaders must detach themselves from mundane tasks. Absolutely not. Leaders go first and lead by example, as I shared this story with you. Leadership's challenge 5 non-negotiables, most important ingredients: integrity. That the people you're leading believe you have integrity. Does that mean you do everything right all the time and you're perfect? No. But when I'm wrong, I tell them. And when I need to make retribution, I do. When I need to say I'm sorry, I do. When they're right, I remember I had a situation years ago. I was going to do something in the community that nobody wanted to happen. They didn't see the importance, didn't see the reason. I spent weeks convincing my staff this is the direction we need to go. One of my key leaders in my company did not believe it was the right thing to do, did not want to follow. I could not convince him. I met with him as a group. I met with him one-on-one. He absolutely could not see this. He couldn't. And so when I made the decision, finally the buck stops with me and I said we were going to do it, he broke ranks and started going to other leaders in the company trying to get them to basically have a coup against my leadership on this issue. The moment I heard it, his name was Marv, I called him aside and I sat him down. I said, Marv, I understand you've gone to this person, that person, trying to convince them that I'm leading you all over the cliff here. He said, I've told you that and I believe that. And I said, well, here's the way it is. You're just going to have to trust me. I said, have you ever seen me do anything in this company that was self-serving? Have you ever seen me do anything? You've seen me make mistakes, but I have ever done anything intentionally to hurt this company or its employees or the people we serve? He said, never. And I said, then, and I don't know why you can't see this, but I'm asking you to follow my lead. Trust me here. And I promise you, if I'm wrong, I need you to help me clean it up. If I'm wrong, I'll come to you and I'll tell you that I've been wrong. But you've got to give me this chance. Maybe you're not supposed to see it. I'm the CEO, so maybe that's a view that you don't have. But we got to do this. I'm convinced of it. And he said, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done this. I'll go and make it right with the people. I'm not going to change my mind, but I shouldn't have gone behind your back. And we shook hands and we went on. 4 months later, there was a knock on my door. He came in, he said, can I talk to you? I said, sure. And he sat down, he said, you were right. I didn't see it, but you were right and I was wrong. And I thank you. And I said, you know what? No, I thank you for trusting me. Trusting me just enough to step out with me on this. And we went on and our tenure together was good. Ultimate test, creating positive change. Leaders create positive change, not negative change. They're constantly keeping people headed in the right direction. Most indispensable qualities, vision and wisdom. Imparting vision. Let's be wise about what we do. That's why I need all the colors represented in my decision making. I need the oranges coming in here with their energy and their vision. I need the golds coming in with practical ways to make it happen. I need the greens coming in saying, well, that's good, but let's make it better. And I need the blues saying, well, oh, that's great, folks, but this has got to have meaning. And they give it that. I want all of those perspectives at the table so that we can come up with a vision. You see, people are going to follow what they buy into, what they think or they believe they are helping create. People will buy into that. The price tag is self-discipline and consistency. Some days, it's really tough standing outside that door to walk into that office and know that I have to be disciplined enough to not let my personal life get in the way. I do trainings on how to keep, I'm doing one next week at hospice for 50 nurses on how to stay focused on your job and not let all the garbage and stuff that sometimes goes on in our personal lives interfere with our professional life and take us off focus. I'm no better than anybody else. I've got just as many issues as anybody does. But every day I go in and, okay, I'm going to appeal to the best of who I am today because it matters. It matters to the people coming in for the trip. It matters to my staff. It matters to the investors. And I don't care what anybody else is doing. I'm going to have self-discipline today. I'm going to have a motivation that keeps me moving forward here. And the biting truth is everyone has something to contribute. Everybody on my team has something. This lady that's quitting has got wonderful gifts to contribute to our effort, but she's quitting on Tuesday. Why? Because she did not want to be held accountable to do the job the way we know it has to be done. She refused for years, constantly. Finally, she said, I'm tired of this. Just what she said, I'm tired of this crap. I don't fit here. And you know what I said, kindly? That's correct. Our culture changed, but she didn't change. She wanted to operate the way it was 5 or 6 years ago, and it's different now. Guiding principle, the pessimist complains about the wind, the optimist expects it to change, but the leader adjusts their sails. You and I have to adjust with what's going on, not be so rigid, but adjust to who we're dealing with. If I'm dealing with a gold, I'm going to adjust myself to take my orange ideas and put them into a context you can understand and believe in. If I'm dealing with a blue, the same thing, or green, I'm going to adjust myself, realizing that one size does not fit all of my employees. That's good leadership. And we don't all, is it easy? No. It takes discipline, self-discipline, and consistency. One thing I think my employees would tell you about me on a daily, you're going to have to work hard to find me having a bad day. Doesn't mean my life's going great out here, but when I'm on the job, I'm focused on imparting energy and synergy to the people that are around me, based on not some act of putting on some act about being motivated, but based on who they are, I'm going to relate to them and try to motivate them in a way that makes sense. In flowing into kind of exiting some of that philosophical stuff, which I believe is incredibly important, we're going to talk now about maintaining a positive attitude. This is the challenge for a leader. I mentioned to you a moment ago that it would be real hard if you worked with me to find me having a bad day. It's not because every day is good in my personal life or outside, or even every day is good at work. But I've learned the secret of consistency in my attitude, how to maintain a positive attitude in the middle of negative circumstances. If we're going to inspire others to listen to our views and follow our lead, we've got to learn how to maintain a positive attitude. Attitude defined. Now, this is important to remember. Attitude, from a mental health point of view, and obviously I've got a lot of experience in that area, is defined as, this is the Winston Dictionary definition, the feeling one has for his or herself. How you feel in the moment has a direct impact on the attitude you project. So, what's the key to having a positive attitude is having positive feelings about yourself. So how the heck do you do that? Well, I don't make any room any longer for people that have a negative impact on my life. Wow. There was a time in my life when I was very young that I had that stolen from me when I was a child. And it took me a long time to get my sense of self back and my sense of personal confidence in who I am as a human being, to get that back. And when I got it, I made a commitment. I'm not going to hang with people, if it's within my ability to do, with people that have negative impact on me. That means there are certain family members I don't get around anymore. Know any of those? There's certain friends that I don't hang with anymore, because all they want to do is pick out those things that are imperfect about me. I know what most of those things are. I've worked on those things. I continue. I don't want to be around people that don't build me or believe in me. If you don't believe me and you don't in a personal way want to build me, then I'm going to be working on getting you out of my life. So that what I believe about myself and what is true, and I'm not talking about walking around in fantasy land about yourself. I'm talking about being very objective about the positives in my life. Focusing on the positive, but also recognizing the negative and working on the negative to make it better. Overall reaching goal is the ability to convey a positive message in our statements, directives, conversation that will inspire others to listen, believe, and follow. I want people to listen to me. I don't want my staff to be sitting there rolling their eyes like, oh, well, yeah. And Does that happen occasionally? I've got a new nurse I just hired a few weeks ago. Guess what? I meet with her for brief periods of time often. I don't sit there and go on and on. I'll ask her to come to my office and we'll sit down for 10 minutes. How you doing? Everything okay? Is everything good? Is everything thought you would? Got any questions? Any problems with other staff that I need to know? We'll fix it. Just constantly communicating the fact that I'm providing support and I care for that person. I want them to listen to me. The best way to get people to listen to you is to first listen to them. Be a listener. It's not easy for a talker like me to learn to listen. I said this earlier. One of the things that helped me become a listener is I have 3 daughters. Farrah, Courtney, and Faith. All 3 of them. If you're to be a good father to girls, you got to listen. When they come in, they're all grown now, all out doing their own thing. A lot of them live here in North Carolina. If I know Farrah, Faith, or Courtney are coming home, I prepare myself like 2 or 3 days ahead of time to listen. I even have got the old deer in headlight pretty firm now that I can listen because they're full of a lot of drama sometimes, right? And what they may be telling me is not really a big deal to me, but guess what is a big deal to me? They are a big deal to me. And I had to learn to listen to be a good father to girls. I actually do a lot of parenting stuff. One of the big classes I've done for years is teaching fathers how to listen to daughters. You women in here know how important it is to be heard. My 15-year-old daughter one time, she's not 15 anymore. One day I did what oranges classically do. I interrupted her in the middle of, how many of you like that? For somebody to interrupt you right in the middle of mid-sentence. Do you hate that? Yeah. And she was telling me something after school. I was taking her home and she was telling me so-and-so broke up with so-and-so, you know how that goes. And I interrupted her right in the middle of it and fixed the problem like, well, I should break up with the bum, or something. I'll never forget the look on her face when I interrupted her. Because to her, it was painful. And I could see it. Even though it was an orange, that wouldn't have bothered me. I'd have just waited until they took a deep breath, and then I'd have jumped in. But to a Blue, my daughter Blue, that was important. And I finally caught myself and said, honey, I'm sorry. I interrupted you. Go ahead and tell me. And of course, now she's too late. Okay. And then she looked at me and said something I've never forgotten. She said, she peeled around there, that long blonde hair flew around, big blue eyes glared at me, and she said, Daddy, I don't want you to fix anything. I just want you to listen. You ladies probably can relate to that. I mean, being heard. And you know what? It changed me forever. Now I prepare to listen to those girls when they come along. Because if you listen, you believe in them, they will follow you. Big question. What do other leaders and employees think or feel when they see you coming? Someone they feel intimidated or challenged by, or somebody they can connect with? It's a big question. This is a principle and a phrase I use nearly in all 50 or so trainings I do on various subjects. Guiding principle, people will forget what you've said to them. People will even forget what you've done to them, but people will never forget how you made them feel. How true is that? You will carry, it's called implicit memory. If you leave somebody with a positive feeling, next time they see you, it triggers that implicit memory, and immediately they're glad to see you just like they were the last time they saw you. But if it's negative, it's going to trigger the negative. And the moment they feel that negative emotion, it's similar to post-traumatic stress disorder. That's what PTSD is. Something you hear, see, or smell something that reminds you of a trauma, and it triggers that negative, and in the moment, it's just like it's happening to you all over again. But that can be true on a daily basis. It's not PTSD, but it's called implicit memory, and it can trigger that. I made a commitment to myself a number of years ago, I made a commitment, and I'm not putting this on anybody else. Some people will say this sounds cheesy, but this is me. I made a commitment that as far as it would lie within me, every person I come in contact with for the rest of my life, this was many years ago, I'm going to do everything in my power to leave with a positive impression. Positive impression. How many times when I've been on the road. I'm not on the road traveling and speaking as much as I used to, but how many times at 2 in the morning have I pulled in at a gas station somewhere here in the United States, exhausted, heading probably usually home late at night, trying to get home from a long weekend somewhere at a conference, and I'm walking to the door and someone else is getting gas at the convenience store and we're kind of walking up. They're 10 or 20 feet behind me and probably I could walk in the door and it's shut before they even got up there. But there's something in me now that says, hold that door open. Sounds like a small thing, right? How many times have I stood there holding that door and that person come through the door and look at me like, what do you want? You know, and say, thank you. And they walk off, we go in, get what we need. And I can name many times where now it would be reversed. We're both leaving at the same time. They open the door, could easily just walk out the door and shut the door, but they don't. They look over their shoulder and see me coming. What do? They hold open the door. And I say, thank you. That sounds like a simple thing, but I had a positive impact on that person just passing in the night at a convenience store in Pennsylvania. As far as it lies within me, I want to have that positive engagement. Now, this lady that's leaving Tuesday, I doubt seriously if she's going to have very many positive feelings for me. But I will tell you this. As far as it has been within my control, she's had the opportunity. Even after she sat with me in a session where I was writing her up and called me everything you could be called in the session. Looked me dead in the eye. And I said, so your intention was to hurt my feelings. I asked her that and she goes, you better believe it. I said, okay, I get that. That was about 6 weeks ago. Guess what? I haven't treated her any differently. I've laughed, I've joked with her. She's expecting me to give her back what she gave me, but I'm a leader, I'm not going to do that. If she leaves with a negative feeling, it's going to be on her, not on me. All I've done is my very best to be to her what I could be. In the midst. Now, you say, well, why would she keep doing that? I don't know. Maybe I look like her ex-husband. I don't know. Could be countertransference. That happens. But we should want to leave people with that good feeling. Same with customers. People that leave your event or whatever you're doing with a positive feeling, the potential for them to come back is great. See, because you don't, how many of you, we all love to eat out, right? I don't just go because the food's good. I go for the environment. Good customer service. Yeah, I can go to a place that's got great food. If the service sucks, the food's going to taste worse. Because your ability to enjoy that food has to do with your brain chemistry. Has less to do with what's going on in the kitchen. Now, people can prepare good food, but if your brain chemistry is wrong and your dopamine levels aren't up, you're not going to like the food. I don't care how good it is. That's why that in the restaurant business, what you're creating is an environment and an atmosphere where people are free and their brain is kicking out the right chemistry that causes them to enjoy the moment. Average food will taste better because of the environment that they're in. The same thing is true with any of us regarding customer service or our employees. Public enemy number one to your attitude is, how do you handle your stress? Wow, think about that. I would say of all the things that impact me as an individual and my stress, I have, and we'll talk about it here in a moment, and I teach this, I've taught hundreds of times all over the country, how to develop a stress management plan for daily use that's individualized. I do workshops, and each group will develop their own personalized stress management plan for them to use every day. I've got one. I'm a high stress guy. If I don't manage my stress, it's going off the scale, and I promise you, high stress will ruin your ability to manage people and create this environment we're talking about. When you have high stress, you release, I won't go into this deeply, but you release a hormone called cortisol and adrenaline. Cortisol is the fight or flight response. If you stay in high stress all the time, What that does, the restriction of blood flow it creates lowers your left cognitive analytical abilities, where impulse control resides. How many of you, when you're stressed out, have less patience and tolerance with your kids and family? Why is that? Right brain, right high affect in your right brain, stress and cortisol, restricted blood flow lowers your cognitive abilities, and one of those abilities is impulse control. So you have less patience and tolerance to deal with problems when your stress is up. You lower stress, blood flow and chemicals are released, dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, and your cognitive abilities come up, and you have more patience and tolerance to deal with issues. So stress is out. Cortisol acts like, I heard a psychologist say one time, battery acid in your brain if it stays there too long. People that live in chronic stress have smaller brains than other people because it reduces the production of gray matter and other parts of your brain that are essential for brain health. And it minimizes the release of dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. Some people handle their stress this way. How many of you, after getting into a big fight, kind of feel better, not better about fixing anything because you didn't, but when you let all that out, you feel a de-escalation in your stress levels. Obviously, that creates problems. How about this? When we're stressed out, we become more confrontational. A lot of that has to do with your personality type as well. For an example, an orange might become more confrontational, a blue might become more withdrawn. When your stress is up, you withdraw. Orange is typically that competitive angle. When they get challenged, they tend to step up to the plate. Or we go into depression. Stress experienced for long periods of time will always result in depression. Why? Because when your stress is up, it diminishes the production of dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. Those are the chemicals that balance your moods. And when your stress is up, those chemical receptors are not functioning properly, and you stay there a long time, you crash into depression. I love this little saying, stress is dessert spelled backwards. How many eat for comfort? My hand is up. I'm a comfort eater. Why does that comfort you? Because when you eat things you like, your body releases natural amounts of the chemical dopamine, which is the pleasure chemical. That's why we eat when we're stressed. How many of you have eaten a big meal? For an example, I can eat a big meal, be totally satisfied, walk away from the table, phone rings, and it's one of my daughters having a bad day, having a bad boyfriend day or bad husband day. What happens to my stress while I'm on the phone with them? Because I'm mostly listening and I'm concerned about their problem. My anxiety level goes up. By the time I finish that 30-minute conversation, I'm eating again. Not because I'm hungry, because I'm stressed, and my habit is to go to food that releases what? The chemical dopamine, which reduces my stress. Now the downside to that would be great. The downside is you gain 30 pounds, because you stay under a lot of stress. Or we do this, alcohol, or any kind of drug. We'll say alcohol specifically. How many people, and I've done this, why? Why does alcohol reduce stress? Because it tricks your brain into releasing dopamine. Any drug, I don't care from nicotine to cocaine, whatever, or heroin, alcohol in between, every time that you use those drugs, they trick your brain into releasing the chemical dopamine that gives you the buzz. Anybody ever had a buzz? Big buzz? Little buzz? The buzz. Well, what happens when that dopamine's kicked out, you get this sense of, wow, everything's not as bad as I thought it was, right? And your anxiety goes down, but you've triggered the release of the chemical unnaturally. You're using food or a drug to trigger the release instead of using, how many of you have also gotten high looking at a beautiful river? What happens when you're out there on that river? Anybody would admit to being an adrenaline junkie in here at all? Huh? What's going on when that's happening? You're kicking out chemical. Some days I cross the New River Bridge, Dave does too, how many times in Fayetteville where we live. some of the views coming across that. My daughter used to work across there, my little blue daughter, and we used to call each other. She'd call on the cell phone. We were headed to work about the same time. "Oh, Daddy, did you see the bridge today? I'm so high," is what she'd say. I said, "Is that the bridge? I want to make sure that's the bridge, honey." Yes, I saw it. There are things naturally in life that kick out these dopamine levels in the appropriate amount. What happens though, when we use, let's say, alcohol, problem is you develop a tolerance. Maybe one beer gives you a certain dopamine release. Well, if you drink that one beer long enough, one beer won't do it, right? You got to drink 2 beers to get the same level of dopamine release. That's called tolerance, and if you do that long enough with anything, you become addicted to it. That's the key in working in the field of addiction that I discovered many years ago and trying to help people get over various types of addictions, is that they develop tolerances. Then a case isn't enough. Then you go to hard liquor and that's not enough. And then the next thing you know, you're always going to something that will give you that release. So the point of this, we got to find other ways to release those chemicals and dopamine to keep our anxiety down rather than resort or relying on. And I'm telling you right now, last year at Grand Junction, I spent 15 hours in the airport, right? Dave and I were coming, and I had 4 flights canceled same day, lost my luggage. I got there after 15 hours and Dave and I had to do what we did last night. What was I asking? What did I tell you? Where was I going the moment I got there? To the bar. I said, "I want 2 gin and tonics now." I got to kind of, because what did it give me? Gave me that kick. After a stressful day, that helped kick out some dopamine, and I was able to come in and Dave and I do our job. Now, I didn't drink 6 gin and tonics. I didn't do, shots. I didn't sit in the bar all night. And I'm not past having a drink. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when we become dependent on those outside things to give us what we need to keep our anxiety. And the question here is what do you use? For an example, quickly, some things to consider in developing your own stress management plan, identifying your main source of stress, team dynamics, personalities, policies, events, attitudes, tasks. Learn to live with unchangeable stressors, quotas, difficult coworkers, supervisors, deadlines, policies. Devise a plan of action to deal with these stressors. Develop well-defined responses. Get plenty of rest. That is huge. And lastly, process your stress and frustration verbally in appropriate ways and appropriate times. One of the best ways to relieve stress is to verbally process. Feelings, emotion, and images get stuck in your right brain. The way you take them out of your right brain, where your worry is that you there's an old saying that I use sometimes, that what you cannot put into words, you cannot put to rest. So verbalization, talking, passes strong feelings and emotions and opinions out of your right brain through some connective tissue called the isthmus corpus callosum that connects with your left brain. When you talk about what's bothering you and you pass those feelings into your left brain, that's where you think about them and come up with solutions. That's the way it works. That's why therapy is good for people. Good therapists don't tell you much of anything. They ask you 1,000 questions so you can talk about your issues. The answers for every problem usually lie within the person. There are no canned answers in the world of therapy. So you want to process your inappropriate ways. You don't want to go talking about employees to other employees. Find a safe place to do that with family members or friends outside of work and do that processing. Human interaction sets the tone for culture. Bureaucracy and structure, though necessary for the success of any organization, are ineffective when solely used to manage the complexities of the individual employee. Every company needs bureaucracy on a certain level, but bureaucracy was never intended to manage people. Believe me, if you've ever worked for the federal government or if you've worked for the state, I've worked for the state of West Virginia, and that bureaucracy kills people because managers use it. You go to them with the problem, they refer you to a stinking policy. Oh yeah, you have to jump through these hoops. It burns people out. It kills them. That's why sometimes in state government you find people that aren't lazy but that are very disengaged and not motivated, because that's what bureaucracy will do. We need, as managers, and I teach within those confines, I teach managers in state and federal government how to create umbrellas for their employees and connect with their employees underneath all of that to help their employees survive it. Public enemy number 2, the bad apple. We talked about this a moment ago. Ever know this person on your team has a following? Bad apples always have a following, and they're always about complaining and whining about everything. Open discussion, managing the bad apple. The goal of the bad apple is to take a bite out of you and take control of the tone of the company. And they will do that by diminishing you in the eyes of your other employees. Here are, I always say this, bad influence corrupts good culture. Got a good culture, and especially if it's a manager, that can be excessively toxic. Being influenced doesn't mean you have become a bad apple. These are some of the characteristics of the bad apple as far as staff is concerned. They're confused. They're always hearing mixed messages. The bad apple counters everything you say. Well, Randy said this, however, what he meant was people influenced by the bad apple become very discouraged, dispassionate, drained, and uncomfortable with the company. They experience burnout. They get frustrated, stressed, uneasy, distrusting. Oftentimes when you see these attributes in your staff, it's because there's a bad apple in there somewhere. These should be flags to tell you somebody, and a lot of these people are people you knew to be good employees, but all of a sudden now they've taken on these negative attributes. They become hopeless. However, it could mean they've what I call contracted a worm. They're themselves not bad apples, but they've contracted a worm from the bad apple. Now they have a bad attitude. And I'm very much about talking to people about their attitudes, especially after a bad apple is left, like you're describing. I'll bring everybody they influenced in and just tell the story. All of you started off here and we're here, and the reason they are is because this bad apple has influenced you in a negative way. But dealing with the bad apple is the first, you have to confront them. Bad apples would rather function under the radar to some degree. Negative attitude, studies show there's a clear correlation between negativity and low self-esteem and self-value. That's why I work to keep my sense of value up, because it will affect my attitude. Self-esteem is regard, respect, or value. Again, the feeling one has for his or herself is the way I maintain a positive attitude. Profile of a negative thinker: insecure, defensive, passive-aggressive, focuses on problems rather than solutions, never goes the extra mile, excessive negative comments, gossiping, engages in personal attacks, consistent sarcasm, critical of all who don't agree, antagonistic attitude, not helpful, blaming, requires change of everyone but self, and resists personal change. When you're dealing with a negative influence in your company, oftentimes you'll have these. Now let me tell you this, I've been every one of these. If I do not maintain my attitude, a positive attitude, I will resort to these within myself. Negative attitudes produce no shared values within the company. Lack of trust, blame culture. It's always somebody else's fault. Nobody taking responsibility for their own actions. No opportunities, diversity is not celebrated. We want everybody to think like us, act like us. Failure is not tolerated, and people lose confidence in their leaders and their system as a whole. These are all things that can have where a bad apple can have influence. Realistically oriented, that's one of the top attributes of a positive attitude. Accepting of self and others. This is who I want to be. I strive to be this as a leader. Display spontaneity, independent thinker, people-centered rather than self-centered. Strongly identifies with others and perspective on events. People are more diverse rather than stereotyped. These are the kinds of thought patterns I want to have as a leader. Positive attitudes produce an inspiring culture, defines and instills values that guides employees, inspires long-term investment, energizes employees to excel, communicates strategic direction and where they fit into it, celebrates diversity, Solution focused, produces a teachable workforce. Wouldn't it be wonderful if everybody we hired was teachable, that wanted to learn, was hungry? How many people do you have come in with prior experience who think they got it? I know this. Had a nurse come in, had 20 years of hospice. She didn't need to be trained. Yeah, you do. You got to be trained in how we do it. Oh, I've done this for, no. You've done it, but you haven't done it like we do it. So you need to be trained. And I had the lady I'm thinking of, I had to fire her recently. She wouldn't learn. Refused to learn. She knew it. I've been doing this. You can't tell me anything about it. Okay. Kind of come to that point. It's got to be this way, you got to go. And so she ended up having to leave. Remember this, culture drives performance. Your culture, the behavior of your employees and your company drive your performance. Employee fulfillment drives customer satisfaction. It's all up to us, and customer satisfaction drives shareholder value and community buy-in. So we need to understand that when we're building employees, we're also building a culture, hopefully an inspiring culture. I do a seminar just on how to change your culture and the steps necessary to change the way a company behaves and the way a company thinks. Inspiring culture will facilitate the ongoing process of right speech, right thought, and right action. I want employees that think right, think like the company. They have right speech. They're similar in the things they display verbally, and then their right action. I want to make sure that I don't have to worry about how someone's going to handle a problem, even though they might be an orange, gold, blue, or green. I'm going to entrust it's going to be done with integrity according to the policy of the company. I don't have to worry about that. Looking beyond the resume, they're going to talk about this when they get into that, talking about hire with culture in mind. And I want to slip right over here and end with this. A wise employer once said, if you give energy, you have a future with this company. If you take energy, you probably have a future elsewhere. I want our employees to realize that our culture, that it's not something that is optional. We know what it should look like, and we want them to be a part of that. It's been a pleasure being with you. Thank you so much. It's been my honor to be with you today. Thank you, Dave.